Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has just touched down in Latvia. He's visiting Canadian troops who are there leading a NATO mission before he heads off to Brussels for what could be a NATO summit for the ages. U.S. President Donald Trump has been lashing out at NATO members, including Canada, over defense spending. Here's what you need to know about the Canadian mission in Latvia. In June of last year, Canada deployed 450 troops to Latvia. They are leading a battle group of soldiers from Italy, Spain, Poland, Slovenia, Albania, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. The mission is to deter Russian aggression in the wake of its annexation of Crimea. Canada was committed to this role until 2019, but CBC News has learned Trudeau will extend the mission by at least 3 years. The CBC's Catherine Cullen is traveling with the Prime Minister and joins us now via FaceTime from Riga. Hey, Catherine, thanks for being with us. What more can you tell us about this extension?
Well, Vashti, we know that it is going to be for at least an additional 3 years. The Prime Minister is going to announce it tomorrow here in Riga or elsewhere in Latvia. He actually has a few opportunities. While he's here, he's going to be meeting with the Prime Minister, the President. He's also going to be meeting with Canadian troops and other troops because, of course, the role that Canada is taking right now in Operation Reassurance is a leadership role, and that is what they are going to announce that they are going to extend. You just gave a very good summary right there of everything that is involved, but of course the timing very significant. As you say, Donald Trump has been speaking at both at top volume and via letters to his NATO allies saying that they are not pulling their weight. Now, this is a message that actually dates back certainly to Barack Obama, but even before. The Americans have not been happy that other NATO allies haven't been contributing quite as much as they should. The goal right now that that all the NATO countries have agreed to is to try to reach 2% of GDP by 2024. But for quite some time, the Americans have been frustrated. So you can expect Justin Trudeau to say tomorrow that this is a significant contribution, a key contribution. And while Canada really isn't all that close to making that 2% goal, right now they're at 1.29%, and this extension is not really going to get them that much higher, the significance of the contribution, the leadership role is something you can expect the Prime Minister to highlight. The question is, will something like that appease Donald Trump?
And speaking of Donald Trump, what are you expecting? What are we expecting when the Prime Minister sees Mr. Trump again later this week, kind of, G7 2.0 in Belgium?
Exactly. And look at the laundry list of issues that they have before them right now. So this disagreement over NATO and Canada's contribution, as well as the contribution of the other NATO members. Talking about NATO, let's talk about Vladimir Putin for a minute. We all know that Donald Trump is meeting with him later this week at the very same time that Canada is announcing the contribution of this effort to try to stave off Russian intervention. Canada has put its retaliatory tariffs in place since the last time these two guys saw each other. And let's not forget that Donald Trump tweet calling Justin Trudeau very dishonest and weak. There are a lot of tension points. It will be interesting to see whether or not they erupt when the two men are in the room together. Just the other day, the Prime Minister said that Donald Trump is someone who has made a virtue out of unpredictability. And I think we can safely say that that really sets the stage for what could happen in Belgium later this week.
It sure does. Thanks a lot, Catherine. Catherine Cullen in
You're welcome.
Riga, Latvia. So why is the government extending its leadership role in the Latvia mission, and do opposition MPs back the move? Joining me now in Fredericton, Matt DeCourcy is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. In Winnipeg, Conservative defence critic James Bazan. And in Vancouver, Don Davies is the NDP's health critic. Hi to all of you. Thanks so much for being with us. Mr. DeCourcy, I'll start with you. I just want to go quickly through all three of you and just get your reaction to the, CBC News has learned that the Prime Minister will announce the mission in Latvia is going to be extended by at least 3 years. Mr. DeCourcy?
Well, the Prime Minister is in Latvia, landed just now, along with the Foreign Affairs Minister, the Defence Minister, and the Chief of Defence Staff. This is the first bilateral meeting of a Prime Minister with our Latvian counterparts. It demonstrates the close bilateral ties we have with Latvia, and our presence leading the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group demonstrates our commitment to the NATO alliance and our commitment to ensuring peace and security and deterrence in the Baltic region, something we know is important given a variety of different ways that Russia has demonstrated aggression in that area. Our collective security requires our leadership through the NATO alliance, and we're demonstrating that. And I'm not going to comment on what the Prime Minister may have to say tomorrow, but I expect a reaffirmation of Canada's acknowledgement of the importance of the NATO alliance and ensuring deterrence in the Baltic region.
Mr. Bazan, do you support extending the mission?
Of course, the Conservatives support the extension of the mission. We've been very supportive of our efforts through NATO and the enhanced forward position in Latvia to deter Russian aggression. It is security through deterrence, which has made NATO so successful over the generations as we come up on 70 years of this alliance. And you know, unfortunately, I think what the Prime Minister is trying to do here today is trying to distract away from the hard conversation that's going to happen in Brussels on whether or not Canada's ever going to come close under the Liberals to meeting the 2% of GDP spending on defence.
And we're definitely going to have that discussion amongst us as well. But first, I just want to get Mr. Davies' reaction to the extension. Is the NDP supportive of extending the mission in Latvia?
Yes, the New Democrats have been supportive of this mission from the beginning, and we continue to be. You know, particularly, I think now when the Trump administration is withdrawing from multilateralism in not only in military ways, but in a myriad of other kinds of aspects, we think it's very important for Canada to have a renewed commitment to multilateral initiatives. And of course, with our NATO allies in this regard, this is, I think, a prime way to demonstrate that Canada is committed to multilateralism, and we should be beefing up our capacities in this regard.
Mr. DeCourcy, let me ask you about that elephant in the room. How much of this is about appeasing Mr. Trump and his demands for NATO allies to spend more on defense, or rather a greater share of the burden?
This is about ensuring greater peace and security to the collective NATO alliance. The 29 members of that alliance, we know as Canadians, are important to our own national security. Our national security is important to ensure our economic growth and security, and that's why we're committed to the enhanced forward position to this NATO mission to ensure that we can deter Russia from the types of aggressions it has demonstrated. And I can tell you, as a member of Parliament representing Base Gagetown, where the majority of service women and men who are in Latvia right now have come from, we are tremendously proud of their service and of their socioeconomic contributions to our country and to peace and security around the world. And this will be a further demonstration just how important deterrence in Latvia and in the Baltics is, and just how important Canada views its role in an alliance like NATO to ensure peace and security around the world.
So this has nothing to do with Mr. Trump?
Canada demonstrated, our government demonstrated last year, our commitment to bolstering our military. We are increasing military spending over the next 10 years by 70%, $32.7 billion per year in spending.
You still won't be close to the 2% of GDP, though, the goal that was agreed to in 2014. This increase in spending comes after significant consultation with military leadership, with Canadians, and with our NATO allies, and it will demonstrate an ability for Canada to continue to play the types of leadership roles that we're seeing in Latvia now, and we will continue to ensure that our women and men are taking on those leadership roles, whether with this current mission or in other future NATO missions, to ensure peace and security around the world. Mr. Bazan, what do you think about that?
Well, we know that the Liberals aren't even going to get close. 1.4% is all they're ever going to get to. The 2% metric that Trump seems to be fixated on is something that is important. This goes back to 2014 to the Wales Summit, where all 29 members agreed to hit 2%. So there is no plan by the Liberals to get there. As Conservatives, we are committed to honoring those types of promises that have been made in the past, that we need to spend that. And it is about burden sharing.
Although when the Conservatives were in government, a lot of defense spending was put off as well. And as a percentage of GDP in 2006 is 1.1%, 2014 it was 1%.
Bassy, you got to make sure that you're comparing apples to oranges, because you got to remember that the Liberals have changed the way the calculation's done. They've added in some extra costs that are under Coast Guard and under Foreign Affairs and under Border Security that now count as defense spending, including veterans' pensions. So if we're going to add on those numbers, then you actually see when we were government that we hit 1.7%.
Still not 2%.
If you're going to, you got to make sure you're using the same methodology. And under that methodology, we did hit hit over 1.7%. So we did get close. And then, of course, you have to look at always making sure budgets are balanced so that you can make those investments into our military. And there's no question that when you invest in your military, you're investing in our economy, because you're creating opportunities for Canadian defense industry to actually create jobs and create the equipment that our troops need. The Liberals don't get that, and they've mismanaged our economy, they're mismanaging our budget, and of course they're underfunding our military and can't even find enough, sleeping bags and rucksacks to provide for our troops.
That's increasing spending in our military.
I want to bring in
You're
Mr.
still
Davies.
We're the government that's increasing spending.
I want to bring in Mr. Davies.
Forget about all the inflation.
Mr. Davies, do you think that the Liberal government needs to be spending more on defence?
Well, first of all, I want to make clear that this has got nothing to do with appeasing Mr. Trump or hitting any number that he may demand. I think what Canadians want to make sure is that Canada spends sufficient funds so that we can keep our troops well equipped, so that we can keep Canada safe, we can meet our obligations for peacekeeping and having the equipment that our troops need in the times they need them.
Do you believe that that's happening right now, though?
No, I don't. I mean, I think there's a lot more work to do, but I think those should be the metrics that we look at and not hitting some arbitrary number.
But that's not Mr. Trump's number, to be fair. That's a number that was agreed to in 2014, and that even Barack Obama scolded our government for not meeting.
That's true. So we should be meeting our international obligations, but I just wanted to be clear that my comments about multilateralism are in a world where Mr. Trump is withdrawing, whether at the United Nations or whether it's in the Paris Accord. I just want to mention diplomacy, though, too, is as important as these military missions are, we can't forget that Canada has an important role to play in the world in pursuing and expanding diplomatic efforts to try to make us safer as well. And the NDP thinks for every dollar that we spend on military spending, we should be matching that with international development funds, which we think also go a long way to keeping regions safe and building capacity for peace.
Mr. DeCourcy, does Mr. Trump have a point insofar as the level of spending? I know you're saying that you're increasing spending by 70%, but that will top out at only 1.4% of GDP. We still rank, among the middle to low of NATO countries on that.
Well, first of all, Vashi, we're a sovereign country and we make decisions of a budgetary nature that are in our own national best interest. We do so, however, in consultation with our allies, and we take on significant leadership roles in the NATO alliance, as well as through a lot of other multilateral forums. Don mentioned our work in development and in other peace and security issues through UN agencies. We certainly believe in a whole of government and a multifaceted approach to ensuring peace and security around the world, which leads to stability in Canada, which allows us to pursue a domestic economic agenda that is supportive of those in the middle class and those working hard to join it.
What's the translation of that? The 2% goal is out the window?
Look, we're constantly reviewing and evaluating scenarios, but we have a robust, a long-term strategy for our military to increase defense spending by 70% over the next 10 years. It will provide stability for the women and men who serve in uniform, for their families, and will allow Canada to continue to play a strong leadership role in the world. Okay,
I've got to leave it there, but thanks to all three of you so much for your time. Thanks to Matt DeCourcy, James Bazan, and Don Davies.
Thanks so much.